Hey everyone, Pratiti Pathak here. Welcome to Unpacking Brain Drama, where we talk about real life experiences, the challenges and the obstacles. Sometimes we use them to block ourselves, sometimes we use them to grow and evolve. Here's what I want to say. Obstacles are not the things blocking our path. Obstacles are the path. So in other words, we have to grow through what we go through. So join me as we have some amazing conversations with some amazing guests. Hey, Kristen, how are you? It's so good to be on the opposite side of the mic with you this time. It's come full circle, you and I.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I know you're going to be in complete flow with this podcast situation, so I'm excited to be here with you and enjoy this process.
This is awesome. So as we all know, if you are new to listening to me or you haven't heard Kristen from Turmeric and Tequila before, she was the very third person to ever have me as a guest on the show. It was my very third podcast I ever was on, and I've been in love with you ever since. Actually, we met at PodMax, I guess a couple of months before we actually interviewed together, and that was in August, and then we got together again in September. So
Yeah.
nice to be chatting with you on the opposite end of the mic. This is so great. So, Kristen, you're doing so much stuff on the same wave as me with working with young humans. I've stolen that from you. I use it everywhere now. So if anybody's listening and they're like, where did you get the young humans? This is the gal. This is who I stole it from.
We're here for you.
But yeah, we've always been on the same path that way. And I know we have so much more work to do together in the future. But tell us all, because you have KO Alliance, you have a few different companies, so tell us everything you're doing that is impacting our young human beings today.
Yeah, so I'm one of four kids. I'm the oldest, and I'm the only girl. I have three younger brothers, and we're longtime athletes. So a lot of my journey and mission has been shaped by sports, played in college, and then competed in CrossFit after college. And then I got into a bunch of marketing and branding, started a little lacrosse company, doing all things like tournaments, team sales, anything that could satisfy the lacrosse market. And that kind of built and grew as my competitive journey did as well. So I've been doing a lot of marketing and branding within the wellness and fitness and lacrosse space. When CrossFit took off, I started to work a lot within CrossFit, and it was a lot of the same conversation. And the more you got into, or I got into marketing branding, I saw this really deep need for transparency. And I established KO Alliance. I think it was like 2000, I don't even know, like 5 or 6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And and this was before Instagram was really big, before social media and filters and everything. And marketing branding back then was still a lot of smoke and mirrors. And now with social media, it's even more. So I was seeing how our young humans were consuming this digital media and media in general, and how false a lot of it was. So being on the athletic side, I coached for 10 years, women's lacrosse at Grandview High School out of college, being amongst our young people. And then being on the business side, I really felt a deep responsibility to start to clear the smoke and mirrors and work with my consulting company, KO Alliance, work with mission-driven businesses. And then I started the podcast to really highlight, like you, varsity humans that are questioning a better way and doing things that are challenging status quo, because I think we needed more examples and more representation of people not doing what they're quote unquote supposed to do and prescribing to all these, force-fed realities that aren't really real, and that, the filters of Instagram aren't really real, and, just starting to bring truth to the game, but in a very positive light. It really wasn't to call out the bad. It was to highlight the good. So here we are.
Well, and you have a podcast where you purposely have conversations to disrupt the patterns. And I think that is such a good example of the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the pretty and the ugly. And you are spot on with that, because when the time frame that you're going back to is before Facebook. It was during, I think there was MySpace out there, right?
And yeah, I was on MySpace.
Yeah. my son was on MySpace,
yes.
And because actually I think Facebook came out the same year of my son's accident. So I think it was like 2009 is when he, so I was completely Facebook illiterate, and I actually was so awkward with the social media and just being in real estate and being somebody who should market on social media. I kept telling myself this story of not being good at marketing on social media. It's just because my introduction to it was so horrible. So when you're working with these young folks way back then, what was their interaction with that social media? Like how were you helping them navigate through just like even today, everybody's like posting only the good stuff.
Yeah. No, it's very much a highlight reel. And I think that's more of like a conscious mindset for everybody to maintain that, like, listen, this is the highlight reel. I'm even on my own social media. I'm not somebody that's like, I had a hard day today tier. And like, if that is somebody's MO or they're comfortable, that's fine. But that's just not the way I share. So it is very much a highlight reel, which I fully acknowledge. But then when I'm looking at other people's social media, I'm also realizing this is the highlight reel, most likely. So starting out, it was hard because like you, I didn't have Facebook or anything until after college. It was about 2008, 2009, thank God. And I was navigating those waters myself. And so, I started my first business right out of college. We didn't really have social media. By the time KO Alliance, my consulting business, took off, it started to be a conversation. And obviously now with Turmeric and Tequila, the podcast, it's very much a conversation. So my coaching with the young people was actually easier. It was harder to coach the older brands, I hate to say, more established brands and companies that were new to it and didn't fully understand the value of it yet. So that was more of a challenge than like my young people or my kiddos, because they already got it. And honestly, I was probably learning from them more than they were learning from me. I could help with like branding and key messaging and strategic play, but as far as functionality and like quit posting and tags and that kind of stuff, I learned more from them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I still learn from them. So I mean, I really can't do a whole lot without them. So I'm not even gonna lie about that.
Exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
can
That's
you
why I have
help me?
faith. Yeah.
I'm doing it right now. Actually, it was all the way up until I had to change my own mindset around telling myself these stories on how I'm not good enough and I can't do it right.
Yes.
Now for these past few years, I've really immerse myself in personal growth and personal development, and I love sharing that. It's kind of who I've always been, but I have to say, going through different things in my life have definitely derailed me. And as I know, that's probably the biggest reason on why I'm so passionate about helping our young folks navigate through their experiences. And I want them to know that on the other side of post-traumatic stress or abuse or trauma, or just even any experience that we perceive as negative, is also something that is so amazing that we have the opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve through those processes. Because I always say, life isn't supposed to be always amazing. Sometimes it's going to be amazing, sometimes it's going to be pure shit. And let's face
Yeah.
it, we learn, grow from the shit. We don't grow from the rainbows and daisies. That's why we put manure in the garden, right? Because we grow
Well
from the
said.
shit. And
I
that
like that.
is like so true. But when you have another company as well outside of KO Alliance, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I want to get more into your branding stuff, but because
Yeah, well, so CRS Lacrosse, Colorado Rising Stars Lacrosse, was my first
yes.
company out of college, and I played lacrosse. And I was from Colorado, went out east to play because there was really nothing competitive at the time in Colorado, and I really wanted to go D1 top 20. And that in itself was a whole learning experience, but excellent life skills for the long term. So when I came back and lacrosse still was kind of growing in Colorado, I'm like, we can do this. We can do camps and tournaments and team sales, and so we just started it. And what didn't know then that I did well was strategic partnerships, calling, STX and some of these like just starting out brands and saying like, we're running a camp. Can you send out free gear or give us a brochure, or let's do
Wow.
sticker, like really simple stuff. And all those little plays, ironically, grew into the next level of like social media and strategic partnerships with Red Bulls and Nikes and, these big guys and, new startups. So it was kind of like this newer conversation, but each little step built along the way. And I really like what you said, how in your own journey, you had to change the narrative of quote unquote not being good at social media. I think every time somebody's getting into that and embracing their voice and reflecting and being like, oh my gosh, look at all this experience I do have, I think it's important to change the narrative of like, I don't know that I have this imposter syndrome. I don't know if I want to be on the mic or on social, like sharing my world. Well, you got to like think about it as, look at all this that I have. It's almost a disservice not to share it, because you do have all this experience. You have been through incredible things and been resilient through them. It's important to talk about it. So I very much had that same conversation myself, like you, and I'm still kind of like working to lean into like, be the influencer, be in like, like lean into sharing your voice, because it is so critically important. But all those things, my first company, CRS Lacrosse, KO Alliance, and then now podcast, have that conversation has been a continuous growth piece.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you're talking about branding, I know that this is something that I don't want to say I struggled with, but in a way, it's just like I didn't know how to do it. And when I was in real estate, which I still am, I definitely knew that trying to connect my essence of who I was out there, along with trying to uh, showcase that I was a realtor. And it just, what wasn't resonating with me was how, like, for me in person, if you meet me in person, yeah, I get the job. But
Yeah.
how do I brand myself without losing who I am? You know, you have these brands out there that are these generic words, you know what I mean? Like, that, what do they really mean? Like, I did not want to be another realtor that was uh, posting another beautiful clawfoot tub or a uh, beautiful kitchen. So I, as a contractor, my nickname was Bird. So I was like, I think everybody would love a birdhouse, and I have a key, you know, the bringing being brought by a bird. And so that became my brand. How do you teach people, or how do you help people brand themselves in a way that they really can show the essence of who they are? Because it's like, there's you and then there's your brand. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. This is a really good practice. And this has been a beautiful thing to kind of experience firsthand from my perspective to see the growth and the way our world is changing. So when I sit down with a younger person, we're talking about branding. I really don't even say that because words at this point, like authenticity and branding and influencer, they're so tired and everybody kind of has their own meaning. I really just try and lean
Yes.
into like the human, like what are you? What do you do? Whatever. And that conversation with my young people is usually easier than a company that's been around, that's established, because our age and what we've done, we've learned a certain way of how to build a company, build a brand, and you want it polished and clean, and this is the agency you work with, and everything's set up. But the thing is, the consumer, everything has changed, social media has changed, everything's different, and people do want authenticity. And regardless of what my traditional and or quote unquote older companies want, the future is our young people. Those are our future consumers. So I'm here to adhere to whatever your target market is, and I will always emphasize that, is this appealing to your younger future purchasing market? So a quick, really easy branding exercise. I'm like you, I always like to get face to face and pull apart things, but really just sit down, just like you did, and think about who you really are, meaning what do you care about? What is, even if it's like, quotes and things that sound cliche, or a bird, or my spirit animal, or tequila and turmeric, like think about what really makes up you, and what excites you, what makes you happy, and forget about the strategic planning and everything else. Think about what makes you happy, and then align it with your industry. So even if like a bird and real estate doesn't make sense, there's probably a point for innovation there. Or turmeric and tequila, people are like, I don't get it, and I'm like, it's a podcast, and they're kind of like, what? And they do kind of get it because they get the juxtaposition. So I really encourage people to, regardless if it doesn't look like this immediate through line, pull what's authentic and real and happy and exciting to you. Sit down with your industry, your company, your mission, and find a way to merge those two. And this is, I'm simplifying a little bit longer of a
Yeah.
process, but find that through line of how to bring those together. And you should be encouraged if they don't immediately look like they fit together, because the point is, you want to stand out in whatever industry or situation you're in. So if you can find a way to make your passion, your authenticity align with your company, that's your through line. And even if it doesn't look like it makes sense, make it make sense.
Yeah.
And that is usually the piece where you stand out on.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, well, you know, I don't want to post just houses, but everybody can relate to a bird house, which is still a house. And I just, because, you know, you want, I keep wanting to, I work with young professionals, and I have a business coaching program and also regular life coaching. But what I really want them to do is connect their clients, their people, their family members, their friends, to who they are as a person. So whatever you're doing out there, you're doing that to create something in the world, even if it's just going out there to make money. But don't lose who you are
Yeah.
as a person. So that's really great. So
Well, people, not to cut you off, but
yeah,
people want to like lean into who you are. But you have to remember also, they can Google, who is Pratiti? What does she do? I had to say, where does she live? Like, what is she passionate
yeah,
about? Does she play sport? Like, people know how to find the truth. So you might as well share it up front. And 9 times out of 10, they will be like, oh, that's so cool. She played lacrosse in college. So did I. Or, she has kiddos, or this, or she lives in wherever. Like, usually
yeah.
those
You want
commonalities
people to
work to your
connect with
advantage.
you. Yeah, you want people
Yeah.
to connect with you. I mean, I noticed so much that when I post stuff that's business related on social media, I don't get the same reaction. I certainly don't
Right.
get the same attention as when I just post a picture of myself and say Happy Mother's Day, or,
Exactly.
or post a little video that just says hello. And people seem to respond to that a lot more because they just want to connect with you. I know that I think that you are a weightlifter as well, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm a
You have
longtime
so many different facets of yourself.
well, athletics and sports and fitness have been such a savior for me. And while I was always like the competing, I got to find a way to monetize it because I put so many hours into lacrosse and then into CrossFit. We did do a little bit of weightlifting. Now it's more just in CrossFit, but
Mm.
there was so much time. And then when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, these things facilitated so many phenomenal personal and professional relationships, so many, potential business and actual business accounts. Like, so much like of it work together. So that's why, again, I always preach, like, keep your passion in your life. It will help breed and facilitate and feed everything else that you're doing in your world. So yeah, I did. I still do CrossFit. And I don't really do any formal like Olympic weightlifting, but back in the day, I did do a few Olympic weightlifting competitions and whatnot.
I've seen some heavy duty pictures of you, so I'm
Well,
like, oh
don't
my God, she's
the
lifting
re-
some heavy weight.
yeah, the recent ones, the form isn't as good. We have to tap into like some of the skill that's still left in there, but I enjoy it. I still try and keep it in the mix.
Speaking of your skills, you have been a pretty powerful force as an influencer of young folks, and that's been all through with weightlifting and lacrosse and bodybuilding and stuff like that. And also, I mean, you've coached lacrosse too, haven't you? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
10 years. Well, we did it all throughout college to like pay bills, but then with my company and then also after college, I coached for 10 years in a high school.
so tell me, what ends up being one of the number one things that you help young women through as, yeah, as they're coming into, young ladies and going out there in the world to be powerful women in the world? What is the brain drama that goes on for them that you've helped them with a lot?
Yeah, well, I will say this. I graduated college in 2004 and so I wasn't out of high school that long, but the difference of my high school experience and seeing the kids' high school experience that I was coaching even, 4 or 5 years later was remarkable. They were exposed, obviously social media taken off, but just hearing their stories about partying and what they're exposed to is so much more than what I was exposed to. So I'm a major advocate for life skills through sports in general for men and women, but particularly our young women in the ways that I don't care if you're playing lacrosse or even piano or acting, whatever, but a way to facilitate life skills such as like team sports and confidence and commitment and, just important stuff we need for our future. The biggest thing that I took away from coaching was how much it was really great for me to hold me accountable. Like I know, I've got 25 young women plus that are looking up to me and they're seeing how I arrive to practice, what I'm doing, how I talk to the refs, what am I doing in my off time? Like they really see it all. So that was a huge accountability piece for me that I really actually enjoyed. Um, but other than that, I think I really was a good example for them to use your voice. And again, this was something that I was still working on, but in that space, I had been in sports for so long, I was very comfortable. So use your voice and then be a strong, confident female. I don't know that I do think a lot of them had that in their life, but I think to see it from a younger woman, the way they saw me encounter the male refs or whatever, and everything was respectful and everything like that. But they really got to see a firsthand example of, you can be strong, you can be aggressive, obviously play within the rules, but stand for what you know. Be a team person. I was very big on camaraderie and supporting everybody. We didn't do any sort of like cattiness or any stereotypes that come with women in groups. We really just worked as like a supportive family. So I hope that was the biggest takeaway that they were able to take with them onto their future.
Yeah, I mean, not only are you extremely confident, and you're also very beautiful. And I think
Well,
that
thank you.
I think that that's a very important thing. And for young girls, young women, or coming into being a young woman, I think one of the most important things that you can do for anybody, and I experienced that myself in coaching, but is to just be able to hold space for them to be able to
Yeah.
talk and for them to be able to open up and be a good listener, for you to be that role model for them. And, as you were saying, I was hearing you say that you weren't a whole lot ahead of them. And to be honest, we never have to be a whole lot ahead of anybody to be able to help them through anything. If you're just one step, or you just weren't learned one lesson more than they did, that's all it really needs to be able to share that and pass it on. I so many times going through all of the different experiences, I'm literally talking to people as I'm going through those
Yeah.
experiences, sharing what I'm learning in the moment. Like, I just learned this yesterday. You got to learn it too. And it doesn't matter that I'm not a master of it. You can still teach it, even though you're not a master. So you've been a powerful influence on them. And, to have somebody who is well-spoken like yourself, I don't know if you've gone through any struggles growing up, or if I know you grew up with boys, brothers, and are you the youngest, did you say?
No, I'm the oldest
Oh,
of
you're the
four. So
eldest
I,
of
I kind
four.
of always had that like responsibility to take, and they're all like 6'2", 200 pounds. They're all huge animals. But I was still kind of like the most boisterous. But the irony, just like you said, and I think you said it really well, you don't have to be deep in it. While I was just out of college, I was still very much gaining my voice. But in that space, I had been in competitive sports for almost, 15, 18 years. So
Wow.
that was a very secure space. And I really did know my shit there, and I was confident in it. But the second I walked off the field and I was navigating like the professional world or even relationships and using my voice with my parents or boyfriends, or like that was areas where I still had to grow. So I'm so with you. And you're like, you could even be really great in an area and struggling in another, but then that's when your friend or teammate or coach or whatever can step in and be like, pull some of those skills through to the other side.
Yeah, so true. I mean, like, yeah, and when you're a woman in sports is all very different than when you're a man in sports. It's kind of like when I did construction work with my ex-husband. I didn't know the work, I knew business, but
Yeah.
again, I was just one step ahead when I was talking to customers, clients, especially men who did not want to talk to a little Indian girl at all about repairing their roof or anything to do with construction. They were like, "What do you know?" And I'm like,
100%.
"Well, I know that you're paying me to be here to do the work. That's what I do know." So, and that's, again, you're a woman in a man's world. And sometimes,
Mhm.
when you're uh, dealing with other people in the world, especially men in an area that they are the majority.
Yeah.
I think that that is a really important place to be able to be that guide and mentor for a young lady, because it's very easy for us to, and this is universal, for us to tell ourselves that we're not good enough in some way, right? I know that we've talked about this even when we first talked on your cast, but like, the fact is, we all have so much to offer out in the world. We all have amazing qualities in us, yet we only seem to focus on the negative. We only seem to focus on where we're lacking. When I talk about, teaching young folks the difference between having confidence and self confidence, they're like, "What do you mean? I thought it's the same thing." But really, when you have confidence in something, when I ask you if you're confident about something, you're going to look to previous evidence to see what you've already been able to accomplish, what you've already achieved, what you've already been able to do, or you've already done it at least once or twice, right? To say, like, "Yeah, okay, I can do this." Self confidence comes from having zero evidence. Self confidence comes from being able to be vulnerable. Self confidence comes from being able to allow people to judge you, to be humiliated, to be embarrassed, and know that that's okay. Like, if you're going to go out there and give a talk, it's okay that you trip on the stage. I shit you not. If I were to go out on a major stage and trip and fall, I would literally say, I would get up and go, "I manifested that for so long. I made that shit happen. I hope none of you got hurt." Because that is what I meant to do. I knew I was going to do it. And I'm glad that we got that out of the way. And then
Yeah.
you go ahead and give an amazing talk. People are going to be like, "How amazing is that?"
Yeah.
So don't let those kinds of things, when you say, like, we're always going to be learning, we're always going to be growing, which means we're always going to be making mistakes. So many times what we end up doing is like not even trying, which is just, to me, failing ahead of time, right? It's like you're so afraid of failing that you just fail ahead of time by not even trying.
Yeah.
So I think these are real. I love being in a place like, we have an amazing opportunity to be able to impact our young people. And I know you and I have talked about this before, is I would love to build programs to actual educational systems for kindergarten, first grade, like KG all the way up to 12, because the life lessons that we're learning today as adults, we should have learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we learning about the fact that we're the only ones that are in control of how we choose to think about things, and that somebody else's actions don't create our feelings? Because everything we do in the world or don't do is to either have a feeling or avoid a feeling, you
Yeah.
know, and that's something that like we don't even teach. You know, when I went to school for criminal justice and psychology way back in the day, right out of high school, that was like, what do you think about the electric chair? I'm like, I don't know. I think discipline should start in the high chair. How about that?
Right. Well said. I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're having these conversations with young folks, is there, do you find people being stuck in places? Is there any place that you've ever been stuck in your life where you know, kept yourself from achieving something and then all of a sudden you had an aha moment? Or did you know right away that, hey, I'm getting stuck here? And did you have somebody that was like really great support in your life that could help you get unstuck quickly?
Yeah, I didn't, again, athletics and sports have been so great because I have failed so many times, cut from teams, didn't travel, had the best game of my life, got sponsors in this and then kicked back down, taken off a team. There's been so many like heartbreaking moments and then heart-making moments that I was so good with failing in sports. It would rip my heart out, but I always knew I'd be okay. Then you get out of sports and competition and life and even in business, I started seeking a better way when I was probably about like 28 to 30-ish. And I started, questioning like intuitives, life coaching, like how can we dial this in? And it was a lot because I was doing personal management of like working with some humans and building the brands. And I'm like, God, I'm more of a life coach right now, which was never what I really intended to be. And that's why we kind of got out of it. But not because it was bad, just because that's not where I was most useful to the world. But I started seeking these things out and working in health and wellness, like some of these human optimization tools like brain mapping and nutrition and fascial stretching. I was exposed to it professionally, but meanwhile, it was actually helping facilitate some of my getting unstuck. And a real aha moment for me was I really realized how much I was muting my light. And these are some major cliches coming at you, but and taking a back seat that it kind of stemmed from my childhood because I had three brothers and I was always like, the leader takes care of the pack first or whatever story I had in my mind. And it was like kind of always taking the back seat. And then I recognized even in college athletics and training alongside some of my other best friends and teammates at the time, I would take a back seat and it showed in my competition. I was second place all the time. And I just thought it was like, just wasn't working out. And I really wasn't dialed into mindset and like those kinds of things. And yes, we were going to make this like youth programming situation courses happen at some point because I'm deeply passionate with you. But I didn't realize how much I was taking a back seat in these like leadership roles where I was otherwise deeply comfortable. But then when I got into like personal, like kind of like personal relationships, but not really situations, I would mute my voice and I would dim the light because I didn't want to be more than. And it wasn't an ego thing or anything, but it took years for me to unpack it. And I was like, as I look back, I was like, okay, we've got 100 second place trophies. We stood back when people really weren't that great of people, but they were supposed to be the best. So I stepped back. I mean, so many little things. And I had to unpack where that really stemmed from. And to this day, I have to practice using my voice, leaning in, getting on social media, being okay talking about this stuff. Like, I wouldn't even, I mean, imposter syndrome, I think is always a thing. And like
Mhm.
anyone that's leaning into something that's there, like if you're good at something that will come at you at some point. It's a little bit past that, but it's more of just some of that stuff becomes behavioral norms. So you just do it without knowing. So I have to consciously be like, wait, am I doing it again? We're coming back. And so this was kind of just like an overarching thing probably from like again how I just grew up, some basic traumas that happened growing up or whatever. And now as an adult, I consciously lean into that awareness of, are you taking a step back? Are you not leaning into your light? Are you not using your voice because of fear or being too much or whatever, or not enough or whatever it is? So this is a very long-winded answer, but that's that I keep that at the forefront of my mind. And then when I see young people kind of experiencing that, I'm thankful that I've had that experience so I can at least plant the seed that it's happening with them and then walk them through it if they're at their time where they want to address some of those things.
Yeah, I think that's so good. Actually, that touches me so deeply because it is literally, I'm really just figuring this out within the last 5 years where I'm going to be 52. So good for you for learning it way ahead of me.
Well, I'm not
That
that
is
far
for
behind
sure.
you. This is why we want to share it because I'm right there with you.
Well, you're a bit behind, like an entire decade.
Well, I still have a lot to
Okay.
learn too. So yes.
Though, and don't we all? But I
Yeah.
will say that one of the things you said to me is like, holding yourself back because letting other people go forward. And, you know, I experienced that in a different way, but exactly the same thing, but mine was on a very like a cultural level. Women don't, just we're not boisterous, we don't stand out, we don't like.
Sure.
And I was, as a kid that was picked on a lot, I was always trying to prove myself. So I was very much tomboyish. I was very much athletic, with not having the ability to go out there and play sports because my parents were probably just a little more nervous and scared about it, and they just didn't know. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do gymnastics, so I just taught myself. I mean, like, I played football with the guys at home. I did
Yes.
all the things, but just not on the sports teams where I would have learned so many skills, especially the skill of being able to fail and know that you're going to be okay. Like you said, I think that's an awesome awareness at a very young age, and super useful tool at a very young age as well. But growing up, always having to think that, oh, let me let somebody else answer, let me let somebody else have a turn, where it was like my mom would say things like, don't be too smart, don't be do this, it's just
Yeah.
like, it's like, so you had to almost dumb yourself down, like you knew you had the answer, but you had to hold yourself back inadvertently. What I did was, I'm a huge advocate for, daily practices and the compound effect of that. And here's the thing, you either have good habits or you have bad habits, but we all have habits, and that's one of mine, that the compound effect of that was horrible, because what it did was it kept me from achieving the things that I really wanted and could have done, and just didn't, because I thought, well, no, I better not.
Yeah.
And that's just huge. And when I look back, I'm like, whoa, what a big lesson to learn. And wouldn't that have been useful to learn earlier? What I mean?
Yeah.
And there was this
It's
always
huge.
driving thing inside of me that knew that, but it was like, I'm not allowed to do that. It was
Right.
like this story that you tell yourself. And so many of us as young people, we put on a belief, you know, that we put it on when we were too immature and didn't have the experience to really understand what it was, what the belief was that we were putting on, and we just took it with us and took it straight
Huge.
into adulthood with us. So that's
Yeah.
really huge.
Yeah.
But you know what, you are absolutely right. There are so much life lessons that sports, being on a team, being a team player, being able to honor yourself and those, being able to respect your own opinion and have a voice in the team, and also be able to collaborate with other team members. I think that there's so many great lessons that you learn as a sports team player.
Absolutely. And I think at any point in time that's really helped me. One, I just wanted to comment around, because like what you were just saying, like generational narrative, what we're taught to believe young. I heard something similar. It's like, don't always be, the most, don't become like, roll with the flow, do this. And which I'm a laid back human in general. There are some things I'm like strategic about, like sports and competition and stuff and business and whatnot. But I think what we like, just like you said, that generational narrative, we almost have to like break up with. And the one kind of beautiful through line with that is like, regardless of what nationality or where you came from, there's usually some commonality in that we all kind of heard that in some capacity. So I think that's really important piece. But then the other part is recognizing when that starts to happen, as young as you are, thinking like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I whatever, and then like clinging to that moment and thinking about it. And then as you get older, taking time to go look back at your resume, go look back at sports videos, or look at all the deals you've done, or being an amazing mother. And when you look back at all that you've done, you're like, holy shit, well, maybe I should be on the microphone because I've been doing this forever. And I actually do have lessons that could streamline someone's process. So that's just a little good practice I wanted to throw out there, that if you're ever when in doubt, like, I don't know that my voice is worthy, look at your history, look at all that you've done. And 9 times out of 10, if you're thinking about it, you're there. It's time to
Yeah.
share.
That's so good. That is so true. It's one of the it's so, you and I are on the same page about so many things. That every time we have conversations, it's just like, psh, the brain explodes. But um,
Truth.
literally, one of the worksheets that I have made up is like it's a questionnaire of assets, and I literally ask you questions to answer from kindergarten all the way, like, what were you good at, what
Yeah.
sports did you play, and you'll realize all of these like inherent gifts and talents that have just been you your whole life, and you forget about that. You're like, oh shit, I really did do that. You know what?
Yes.
Everybody loved me for that. Everybody came to me for that. I was the go-to person for that kind of thing. I always, you will see the patterns in your life, the good and the bad. You'll see where your superpowers are, and you'll see where, you've always needed the improvement, and you'll see the things that you've been avoiding. So I think
Yes.
that's really, really great exercise, is to anybody who's listening right now, like literally sit down and get a piece of paper and a pen and just write down everything you've ever done, and don't even discount, like, I won the art show in second grade,
Yeah.
because I think that is so huge. That's where we can get that confidence. That's how we do build that confidence that gives us the ability to say, you know what, even if I've never tried it, I know that I have it in me to do it. Because if you're not afraid of failing, and if you're not, you got to be uncomfortable and do it anyway. Be
100%.
afraid, be afraid and do it anyway, because that's
Yeah.
the only way. That's the only way. So tell me, what are your future plans and goals out there in the world? What are you trying to accomplish out there?
Yeah. So I've been compelled to, the podcast has taken over. I still obviously have KO Lines, and actually CRS Lacrosse is in the mix as well. They kind of operate similar as marketing consulting situations. The podcast really is my passion piece. I'm deeply clear that this is my most purposeful platform to be a positive impact in this world. So I don't know how it's growing or what it's going to do or where it goes, but I know I'm in alignment with it. We started out the YouTube channel and doing just daily quotes, like little simple practices to help inspire people just start the day right. Just something super, super simple of getting right. I've dialed in my morning routine. I actually posted my podcast today that shares that morning routine, how I came up with it, why I think it's important. It's a quick 15-minute cast. But I'm being really intentional of, just like you said, leaning back into my young self and all the things I cared about as a kiddo. I always laugh that, like, we spend all this time, energy, and money to get away from where we started, and then we spend all this time and energy, money to get right back where we did start. So you go back to like kiddo self and like art and creativity. And I loved the music scene. So I'm really working to blend the podcast with the music world, and then with like the intentional motivational world of daily affirmations or questioning a better way with deeper conversations, and really just trying to have little sparks of light for the world around me that to consume and hopefully just better their day, as simple as that sounds.
No, I love it, because I'm a huge like, for me, like I said, the compound effect of daily practices is one of the most important things that you can gift
Yeah.
yourself. To be quite honest, I am like, I'm crazy about your morning routine, and really, to me, the success of a morning routine is your nighttime routine. Like,
Yeah.
get your shit together the night before, make it easy for yourself, have a food protocol, have an exercise plan for your, to maintaining your health, whether it's working out at the gym, whether it's going for a walk with your dogs, whatever it is, you have to have something that you're doing every day for your body. And you
Yeah.
have to have something that you're doing every single day for your mental and emotional health, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's prayer, journaling. I don't care what it is, you have to have something. And the thing is, be careful. It's not just about avoiding things, right? When you're trying to lose weight, it's not just about avoiding flour and sugar. It's
Right.
also about being mindful of what you're putting into your body. It's not just about avoiding the news, which I highly recommend anybody to do. Do not be watching the news first
Detox.
thing in
Yeah.
the morning, late at night. Like, if you're going to do it, get a half an hour in at lunch break or something like that, and be on with your day. But horror movies, horrible. Like, be careful to not, yeah, avoid that, but then not be putting the good things in. Listen to those audiobooks. I'm constantly recommending really good books. I'm not a novel. Let me stop lying. I'm not a reader. I'm an Audible girl. Let me stop
Yeah, that
lying to the
works.
world.
That
But
works.
I consume a lot, and that's another thing, is like, you got to be careful. I call all these things buffering, but I buffer with consumption. I am constant, where I got to take a break from the podcast and
Yeah.
all of the great stuff. But like, yeah, put some solid routines in place. In order, you can't be successful in your business, in your life, financially, personally. You got to put those things as priorities to take care of your self-care, your body, your mental
Absolutely.
health. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
And
so
I
awesome. Go ahead.
I would say that, 'cause I'm a pretty unstructured human, though. Like I always do things kind of like my way. Like I'm more of a night owl than a morning person. But I will say anyone that's like hearing this and they're like, oh my God, this routine, it sounds so overwhelming. I completely agree with you. That's why I didn't do it. I'm about 90 days in at 40 and I've never done it until now because it just sounded like too much. And I love too much of everything, but it was just a lot. So I think if you can just shift your mindset of just do a little something every day, even
Yes.
if it's 5 minutes, and then build from there, it's so much better. Just don't be overwhelmed with how it sounds. Cause once you do it, you'll be like, oh, this isn't that big a deal.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because when I say morning routine, people are like, what? But it doesn't have to be this 3-hour morning
Right.
routine. There are many, many workouts out there that you can do for 10, 15 minutes. There are many,
Yeah.
many, you can do a 5-minute, 10-minute meditation, or you could do 10 minutes of just dumping your brain out onto a piece of paper. There are so many things. You could just wake up in the morning and be grateful for things and write it
Yes.
down. Like
Yeah.
there are so many ways. I'm just saying, do something every day. It doesn't, but when you start your day with taking care of your physical and mental health, you start at 100%. And when you take care of like your food and your eating, especially if you're somebody who's a solo entrepreneur, which is what my business program is, you're out there on the road all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're eating like shit because you're going through drive-throughs, you're depleting all day long is all you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. So that's all I'm saying. And then by the time you come home back to your loved ones and you expect to have great personal relationships, not going to happen when you come home grumpy and depleted and tired and gone.
Right.
So that's something to be careful. If you come home exhausted, you're not going to be like energetic for your kids, your wife, your husband,
Mm-hmm.
your people. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So if there,
Completely.
you already have told us so much about how you support and who's been supportive for you in your life. Who's been the number one support person for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think, I mean, my mom has always been there, and she kind of like, she hears all the crap from all of us kids. So she's always like the backbone. My grandma's always been there. My dad is like our number one sports fan. He always shows up. He knows just how to handle us like in a win or a loss or anything in between. They were always a great team like that. My dog, Cleo, was my first one. I've had it for 6 years, as simple as it sounds. She has been such a grounding force of like, you got to take out the dog. You got to do this. Like, again, just to add a piece of structure. And she's a hilarious diva. I have 3 rescues. So all 3 of them are their own situation. But I really just think family, and then like your lifelong friends. I have friends from college that I still keep in touch with. And I went to school, outside of Colorado. So thankfully one actually lives here, and then a bunch of others I keep in touch with. And even if it's like us sending like joking memes, or we, catch up and talk, one just had a baby and one's going through some other stuff, like we keep in touch. And that's very much a grounding support in my world, because they knew young Kristen and like all of my, fabulous disastrousness, all of it. They know all the shit. So I think those relationships you've had for a long time, even if it's like 1 or 2 alongside, your family, sometimes family can be the most, but I would say friends and family broadly, and then like a few pieces I go to for specific things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if there was one solid piece of advice that you would give to your younger version of yourself, young Kristen, what would it be?
Oh, young Kristen, you need a few things, but I would absolutely say, oh, this is so cliche, but let your light shine. Everything that I'm like really like, and then I knew as a young human that there was things that I innately knew. Like I really always have had this grounding space, and it kind of just had like a rooted soul. I don't even know if that makes sense, but that's just what came to me. And I was like a hot mess on some other things, but for some reason I always had this very sense of base. Like I never, you know, did things I didn't want to do, or got caught into like peer pressure. Like that was never my vibe. And probably was a lot because of lacrosse. And I had a very intentional goal early on, but if I would have just listened to who I innately was and knew how to do that, and then let the light shine more, I think that would
Mm.
have positively impacted things. And I will say I probably wouldn't change anything, because as you know, we have to go through all the shit to get to where we are. So and I probably wouldn't have listened to old me anyways. I've been like, hey girl, bye.
I
So
love that answer, because you're right. We all hear things when we're supposed to hear it. I mean,
yeah.
I know that, for all the years that I've been listening to Tony Robbins and the Zig Ziglars and Wayne Dyers out there, I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me this earlier? But the fact was, all of a sudden I was listening to something, whether it was Jim Rohn or whoever it was, and I was like, oh shit, my mom's been telling me that stuff all my life. I just couldn't
Yeah.
hear her. I just
Yeah.
couldn't hear her. So, sorry, Mom.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's how it goes though. It's like one coach tells you something and the other tells you something else. And it's like, oh, I get it now. They said, and the other coach is like, I've literally been telling you that for 10 years. So
Obviously, yeah.
it just
I
is
hear
what
a
it
lot of
is.
couples saying that, oh, sure, when she says it, no big deal. But when I
Right.
said it all these
Right.
years now. So yeah, totally, totally, totally. So tell me, where can we find you out there in the world doing all the things if we want to get with you? Where is Kristen?
Yeah, I'm probably most accessible as a wannabe millennial on Instagram. My personal is at Madonna's Hero. I'm a huge Madonna fan.
Me
And then
too.
everything Turmeric and Tequila, it's Turmeric Tequila on IG, turmericandtequila.com. KO Alliance is KOAlliance.com. My website is currently down because I'm redoing the business one, but any one of these things, you can find all the rest. So we're out here, we're accessible. I love hearing back from people or questions or feedback. So it's an open door as much as possible.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're going to have all your links below so that they can get with you easily. And if anybody wants to get picked up and lifted up, Kristen, she's got an amazing podcast, Turmeric and Tequila. Go listen to it. And let me just give you a little quick hint and a little bit of a tip. If you're normally listening to something on like 1.5 speed, do not try to listen to her on 1.5 speed. Your head will spin straight off of your shoulders. So yeah, especially if you get her with another person like me talking at the same time, not going to happen,
Yeah, you
You're
might even
gonna
want
be
to like slow it. You might want to slow it down. Sometimes I actually try and intentionally work out before podcasts because I get so excited. I talk fast anyways, but when I'm excited, it's like, girl, you need to just calm down. But I can't. So yeah,
It's
you might
hard.
want to just even pull it back. That's solid
I've
advice.
definitely had to like intentionally like be very conscious of myself, and I've had to I think I've done well with slowing it down, and still
Yeah.
people are like, hey, I love your energy, I love your energy, I love your energy. So I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess it's working, guess
I
it's
mean,
working.
some things you got to just go with, and it may not be for everybody. It may be for some people. Like sometimes you just got to let it be what it is and let the universe figure the rest out.
It's for everybody that wants it. That's
There
what
you
I
go.
think. That's for
Yes.
everybody that wants it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. This has been amazing. And I can't wait to have so many more conversations. We're definitely going to do something for our future humans, our young humans for the future soon.
Yes. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing. Check out our cast on my on Turmeric and Tequila. I think it's tangible positive energy. It's one of my most downloaded casts. I think I've told you this, and it's a quick one, but it's phenomenal. I love what you're doing, and I'm so excited for your voice to further be in this world.
Thank you so much. You have been somebody that inspired me right from the beginning. So you
Oh,
have definitely been a force in my life. So thank you very much for that.
thank you. That makes my heart so full.
Thank you, Kristen. Bye. Thank you for listening to Unpacking Brain Drama podcast. You'll find links for all the things mentioned below in the show notes. And it would be incredibly awesome if you would take a quick moment to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. If you'd like to be considered as a guest on our podcast, be sure to go to www.resultsbydesigncoaching.com for a free 30-minute coaching session. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time.